Hey there, fellow chess goons. My name is Anthony Arena. I am a 2000 rated chess expert from Long Island, New York. Today, we're going to go over the 7 tactics that you absolutely need to know in order to become an expert chess player. We're also going to go over some real life examples and famous games related to these tactics. I'm super excited, so let's just jump right in. The first tactic we're going to go over is called a desperado. A desperado is when you're going to lose the piece no matter what. So let's say g4. Now the rook is under attack, but also we're attacking his rook. If we simply take the rook, then he takes our rook and it's still an even game. But if we play rook f4, checking the king, king takes back, and then king takes rook, now in this position, we're up an extra pawn, and that is going to be what wins us the game. In this example here, our queen is under attack and his queen is under attack. But notice that if we took the bishop here, the king would be in check. So queen takes, king takes back, and now in this situation, we can just take the queen and we're up an extra minor piece. Finally, guys, I want to go over the most famous Desperado of all time, Burra via Peric, a Grandmaster Showdown. In this situation, we're attacking his queen, but our opponent is attacking our queen. And Burra finds the absolutely insane queen to h8. Brilliant move. King takes back. This is forced. And now we win the queen. But notice in this position, the knight has nowhere to go other than d4. You can see that in any other move, we would just take the knight back and we'd be winning the exchange. So knight to d4. But here comes bishop e7 attacking the rook. And if you defend the rook, we have this insane fork. And in this position, we are just winning. Tactic number 2, the Greek gift. And the Greek gift is a fascinating move where we sacrifice the bishop in order to gain an attack on the king. Similar to a Trojan horse, we play bishop to h7, and after the king graciously accepts our token of friendship, we go ahead and attack with knight g5, and it's not so friendly anymore. King g8, and you can see this is actually a brutal attack, and there's going to be no way to defend h7 without losing substantial material. Embarrassingly enough, I actually got caught in a Greek gift sacrifice against a much lower rated opponent of recent. In the Budapest Gambit, I played bishop g5, pinning the knight to the queen. But in this situation, my opponent had the brilliant bishop f2. And after the king takes the bishop, accepting the gift, of course, knight to e4, checking the king. But notice now we have a double attack on the bishop, and he's going to win back the material. He's going to get the queen involved, and we're going to be in some serious trouble. Finally, we're going to go over my personal favorite Greek gift sacrifice between Khan and Sabayan. This is an extremely famous position. And first we see knight to g5, brilliant. And the whole idea here is that we're eyeing down h7. And of course, the pawn is going to go ahead and take. The Greek gift sacrifice comes from bishop h7. And after the king graciously accepts our sacrifice, we play h takes g, discovering the king with our rook. The king just moves back into place in g8. And for extra pizzazz, rook to h8, king takes back, queen h5, and after the king goes back to g8, we have the insane g6, and the opponent resigns here. You see, there's no way to stop the checkmate that's coming on h7 without losing substantial material, and that sacrifice is going to be more than worth it despite being down 9 points of material. Tactic number 3, trapped pieces. This whole idea revolves around suffocating your opponent's pieces and trying to win a minor or even major piece. In this situation, we're in a very common Queen's Gambit accepted position where after we sacrifice the pawn on c4, our opponent tries to protect the pawn profusely. We play A takes B, pawn takes back, and in this situation, notice the rook is completely cramped and the light square diagonal is open for the taking. Queen f3, and now the rook is under attack. And of course, there's no way to defend the rook without sacrificing a minor piece. But rooks aren't the only pieces we can trap. Notice in this situation, this dark square bishop is very strong eyeing down b2. If we take this pawn, bishop takes back and we're losing. However, f6, and now the bishop's mobility is completely cut off. In fact, this bishop is in jail. It will never move again. It's completely trapped. We don't need to win it. It's basically a glorified pawn that will never leave h8. Now we can go ahead and march our king towards the center, eventually winning these 2 pawns, maybe even playing bishop to c3, for example, to protect the structure, and we're just completely winning. Of course, none of these trapping tactics even come close to Bobby Fischer's insane move against Reshevsky. It starts off with bishop f7, almost resembling a Greek sacrifice, but after rook takes, we have the absolutely insane knight to e6 attacking the queen. So let's just run this by as if we were black. Obviously, the knight is attacking the queen, so we just take the knight, except the queen is actually completely undefended and hanging. So if the pawn takes, queen takes back, and we actually win the queen. Okay, queen c7, blocked by the knight. Queen b6, blocked by the bishop. You guys are starting to see the point. There's absolutely nowhere this queen can go, and Bobby Fischer has brilliantly trapped the queen. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, definitely go ahead and hammer that like button, hammer that subscription button. Let the algorithm know this is where you want to learn chess. Let's continue. Tactic number 4, stalemates. And I know what you're thinking. This isn't really a tactic, but I'll show you that this gets very complicated very quickly. So let's keep it simple. King to A1. And in this situation, we can all agree black should be winning, but if black makes the mistake of playing queen c2, notice this is actually a draw. Despite being up 9 points of material, white has nowhere to move, and this is considered a stalemate. If white is not in check but has nowhere to move, it's a complete draw, and you shake hands, and that's it. Check out the second position right here. Notice that the rook is blocking the king, and this pawn can't go anywhere. So if the white rook goes to a2, and the king takes, there's nowhere else for white to go, and it's a stalemate. The crazy part of this position is if the king goes to b1, the rook just keeps following, and you get the point here. This will eventually be a repetition of moves, which is also a draw. You either repeat moves or you take the rook and stalemate. And that, my friends, is a stalemate tactic. Let's go over another embarrassing moment in my chess career. In this situation, I'm attacking his rook with my king. His rook moves over to g4, and I just go ahead and take the pawn. Now the rook checks me again, and I foolishly take the rook. And unfortunately, this is where things get really bad for me. Rook takes, and in this situation, I am in check, of course, but it's more complicated than that. Notice the king has absolutely nowhere to go. And if I took the rook, it would be a draw, stalemate, and that's it. Of course, if we go back and I decide not to take the rook and let's say play king g3, we see the same exact tactic from earlier where rook f3 is implemented. And here he can just keep chasing me until it's a repetition of moves. Tactic number 5, the double check. Let's just go over a very simple example. Notice that if bishop to b5, we're checking the king with our bishop, but we're also checking the king with our rook. If the game gets a little more complicated, you can find there are a lot of different positions where we're completely winning by implementing the double check. Position number 2 is a really funny example. In this position, we're actually down 61 points of material. Our opponent decided to create 6 queens and 3 rooks. Very casual stuff here, guys. But bishop to b5, and notice that despite being surrounded by 6 queens, this bishop can't be taken by any of them because there's also a rook check. You can't block this check because the rook is checking, but you can't block this check because the bishop's checking. And in this way, despite being up 61 points of material, black has lost. Now let's go over a famous example of the double check by one Richard Reddy against Tartower. And in this position, the Grandmaster played queen to d8. And in this way, king takes back, and we have bishop g5, double check. The knight and queen are both attacking this bishop. Both pieces can also jump in front as well as the bishop to block this check, but you can't block both checks at the same time. You're forced to move the king. If king to, let's say, c7, we have bishop check and mate. Notice that all the squares are blocked, so that's not an option. But then king to e8 is just as brutal. Rook d8, checkmate. All right, guys, tactic number 6, pins. Pins are going to be one of the most fundamental and important tactics that you can possibly learn. In this position that you've probably seen millions of times, the knight has developed to f6, and we can simply play bishop g5. If the knight moves without first defending the queen, let's say knight to e4, attacking the bishop, we just win the queen, right? But that's a very simple example. Let's see if we can find something a bit more complicated. In this situation, we can actually play bishop to d3, pinning the rook to the queen. And in this way, if the rook moves, the queen is now hanging. However, as a counter-strike, you can actually play rook to d6. And now the bishop can't take the queen because he is pinned to the king. So defending a pin with a pin. Finally, we're going to go over a very famous position called the absolute pin. In this position, we can sacrifice our queen on e7. And notice if the king just moves over to c8, we win the rook and the game. So you have to take the queen, right? We know that. Rook takes. But now in this situation, notice the bishop is paying the rook, and the king is actually back ranked here. Rook g8, checkmate, and you can't move the rook back because of this pin. Finally, guys, we're going to go over my favorite tactic of all, forks. Everybody loves a good fork. In this situation, the rook and the king are in a position where after knight d4, we are attacking both pieces. You have to move the king, knight takes, and we've just won. Of course, forks are not just conducted by knights. In this situation, the rook is forking both bishops, but black can actually defend both bishops by playing bishop to d4, forking the rook to the king. In this situation, we are defending a fork with a fork, and we've just won the game. To finish off forks, we're going to go over an absolute treat of position between Boris Spassky and Tigran Petrosian. And in this position, notice we are attacking the rook with our knight, and if we were able to force the king onto h8, we would actually be forking him with the queen. And that's where queen to h8 comes into play. A brilliant move that forces the king to take the queen. And after king takes queen, we have knight takes rook, forking the king and the queen. And it is game over. We're just up 2 knights to 1 now. Overall, guys, I hope you enjoyed the 7 tactics that you absolutely need to know in order to advance in chess. This video was an absolute pleasure to make, and if you enjoyed it, definitely go ahead, leave a comment below. Let me know what your favorite tactic was. Other than that, definitely check out this video on the 7 checkmates that you absolutely need to know as well. These will tie in greatly with the tactics, and using the 2 videos together will help you improve in chess. Stay classy, my friends.